pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Like I said, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I would have asked everyone to follow the state mandates right now that we social distance and wear masks properly, covering our face and nose. And I will move to item D, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, before I move to approve the agenda tonight, I think we're all here with heavy hearts for a bit. You turn on the TV, you see what's going on in Ukraine. There are kids that, it's about 5 a.m. their time, kids who will not go to school today. They're sleeping in a bomb shelter right now, and it's a crazy world we live in, and can't imagine the thoughts of the monster that's initiated this, but clearly my thoughts, and I think the thoughts of all of us are with the country of Ukraine and those kids. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of the agenda as presented.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Mr. Nyquist. All right, I'll move us to E, comments from the public, which will be read by Superintendent Saxton.
Yes, thank you, Chair Alganagua. We have 8 public comments tonight. 5 requesting an academic achievement plan, 1 with concerns about the board's voting record, and 2 who are unhappy with mask mandate. Public comment number 1. I spent 25 years at ATI Wah Chang, and in my last role, I was Vice President of Technology and Quality. In order to hire qualified individuals, we were constantly having to go outside the local area and even the state of Oregon to find candidates for our semi-technical and technical positions. I've worked with Ms. Mayee for 13 years on a scholarship contest she has sponsored completely with her own funds. The first place winner in each of Albany's 2 high schools will win a $2,000 scholarship, while the second place winner will receive $500. Further, the high school science department receives an award of $500. Thus far this year, only 2 students are actively working on their essay papers. It is sad to me that a $2,000 award isn't sufficient motivation for writing a 10-page essay. It certainly shows lack of inspiration and perhaps motivation. Ms. Yee has called out the abysmal lack of performance on standardized tests for several years, and little to no progress has been made. The only way to make progress is to have a concrete plan with specific goals and dates by which those goals can be accomplished, and to hold yourselves and GAPS employees responsible for reviewing progress and making changes and corrections as required. So that was public comment number 1. I failed to mention that these are shortened and edited. The full content, of course, is in the board packet, and I know that you all read those. So, but for some brevity, there is some edit. Public comment number 2. It's deeply concerning that there are 4 members of the board who appear to have an arrangement where voting is a block and their main priority when their priority should be what is best for the Greater Albany Public Schools. Only 1 member, Michael Thompson, votes independently of the block and raises questions about fiscal responsibility and appropriateness for the local community. It would be reassuring if the board could issue a statement why they awarded an unprecedented salary for the new incoming superintendent, Andy Gardner. Mr. Gardner sounds like he will be a fine choice, but what makes him worth almost $40,000 more than the previous administrator and well above the salaries in area districts? It would also be reassuring if the block of 4 would tell the public what their agenda is. It is troubling to know only that they intend to have their way regardless of district needs. Public comment number 3. I would like to voice my wholehearted support for Senator Yee's proposal for a publicized, successful 6-year academic improvement plan, because what I have seen over the past 6 years with my children's education has left me at a loss for words. To clarify, this has nothing to do with the teachers my children had. They are all amazing. This is only regarding curriculum. When my 2 oldest children attended Takina and Central, they never brought home any homework that we can recall except my son's first grade year, and when my daughter was required to have a certain number of daily reading minutes. Never learned cursive, never had a single spelling test that we were aware of. Handwriting and letter forming practice seemed so minimal that we took it upon ourselves to practice consistently at home. Never memorized our multiplication tables. According to the school, there wasn't time built into the day for that. We never saw daily work come home, and there was shockingly little communication between school and parents until COVID. We moved to North Albany. Incredibly, all of the points above were covered at Oak Grove Elementary. My kids experienced weekly spelling tests, cursive, daily homework, and multiplication table memorization. For the first time ever, my kids have a well-rounded education. There's been an abundance of talk regarding equity, equality, and diversity within GAPS. My observations about our experience in some of the lowest income schools in Albany versus the high income schools were, quite frankly, appalling. My kids who attended a lower income school didn't seem to be receiving even the most basic education. Bottom line, I wrongly assumed curriculum and teaching models were standardized across a single school district. I had no idea living in one area of town would cause my kids to miss out on fundamental pillars of education. Not moving to North Albany sooner has become one of my biggest regrets. I would like an answer in writing that explains this disparity and what GAPS is doing to equalize educational experiences so that low-income students get the same thorough education as those living in a higher income area. Please consider my request as an addendum to Senator Yee's plan for improving test scores. Public comment number 4. I'm writing to support helping our children to reach a brighter future by GAPS publicizing an academic improvement plan for 100% of our students passing state standardized tests in reading and math in 6 years, with timeline and strategy. I am appalled at the distressingly low performance of our schools. The schools seem to be accountable for their responsibilities, need to be accountable for their responsibilities. The students' future, as well as the nation's future, is in your hands. I look forward to hearing from you. Public comment number 5. As readers of this page know, I've written several times over the past years to express my dismay in the low testing performance of students across the county and especially in the Greater Albany Public School District GAPS. I urge them to adopt a publicized academic improvement plan that would lead to 100% of our students passing the state standardized tests in English and math with strategy and timeline. It is worth repeating that only 32% of our 11th grade GAPS students passed the state math test in 2019. Further, in 2 of our elementary schools, only 17% of third graders passed the state math test and only 11% passed the English test. This is in spite of the fact that funding for school has increased by an annual average of 18.49% for the past 16 years. Everyone should agree that these low performances are unacceptable. Students who graduate with low basic skills not only have a tough time finding employment, they also are much more likely to face problems such as drug and alcohol addiction and homelessness. I'm soon to be 94 years old, and it is my fondest hope that I will live long enough to see a time when I don't need to write any more letters bemoaning the quality of public school education. Public comment number 6. We've only been in the area a few years and recently learned of the low testing performance of the students in GAPS. How are we preparing our children to have a successful future if we are not providing the tools to succeed? These rates should be an alarm and warning. It should stimulate everyone's interest to build a solid plan to improve these poor test passing rates. Please help children now by formulating a solid plan. Public comment number 7. As grandparents of GAPS students, we've been very concerned about the negative impacts of mask mandates. GAPS has chosen to follow state mask mandates even after the CDC has admitted they do little to stop the spread. Since the state decided to lift the mandate on the magic date of March 31st and then changed it to March 18th, one wonders what kind of science they are using and why have you allowed this mandate to continue without fighting back? Public comment number 8. I need to start by saying that I have the utmost respect for this board and for all you have done for GAPS students thus far. I'm asking that you step up again and take a stronger position on the mask mandate. We've seen the announcements from the state that the mandate will end March 19th. More recently, we've seen a message from GAPS that it intends to align with that date, which will provide time to develop a plan to ensure students can safely remain in classes. According to ODE-OHA, the days leading up to the removal of masks are meant to be a time of transition for schools and districts. Other districts and schools in the state have decided that they will make masks optional, effective immediately. These districts and schools are taking the stance that immediate optional masking is their transition plan. I hope that GAPS can borrow from this logic, take a stance, and put priority where it ought to be on the students. That concludes the comments for tonight.
Can I respond to the mask comments? The board has made it clear, I think, July 14th, that we would follow state and federal requirements. I don't think we've wavered from that for a minute. And as those state and federal requirements drop, the default position is whatever those requirements are. So I don't know how we stand up any more than that. And a mandate in this case with the state of Oregon is a law through administrative rule. And for better or worse, I don't know how we would or could have the ability to waive state law. That's just, and even if we could, how would that work? Superintendent Saxon, we would instruct you to ignore and violate state law, and then you would tell principals to violate state law, and principals would then tell their teachers to violate state law. I mean, just not seeing how that would work, and I think that we've all done the best that we can. Many of us have engaged policymakers at the level making these decisions and made our thoughts known. My experience is we're better off when we talk to them and not about them on the front page of the newspaper. So clearly, I think that everybody involved, including kids and parents, teachers and staff, has done the best they can to get through this difficult time. And I hope that we all will look at the March 12th date that was announced today as an acknowledgement and a celebration of the hard work that everybody has done to keep schools open, and we're able to move beyond that, and that the mask will come off consistent with CDC guidance and state law. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nyquist. Mr. Superintendent, if you want to keep rolling to your superintendent report.
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Chair Aganagwa. Practice that I've regularly had in place as a superintendent is to walk back over my goals partway through the year. It's not an agenda item, but I thought I would do it just in my comment this evening. I don't think that they were, I certainly put them out for the public, and you all knew what they were coming into the year this year. I don't think that they were super formalized, given that it's an interim position. But what I wanted to do is just take a minute to go back over the goals that I did set at the start of the year. It's the last day of February. Spring break is 3 weeks away, and then it's going to be a blur. And so I did think it was important just to make sure that I'd go back and look at them periodically to make sure that I know that what I'm supposed to be doing, and that I'm on track, and that, you know, this is my intent to deliver on during the course of the school year this year. And be my hope that at the end of the year, I'll be able to look back and say this happened. So the first goal was just to work with the school board so that they can be their very best on the nuts and bolts of how board meetings work, enhancing the understanding of education and our district systems, and broaden commitments to all students, especially BIPOC students. So I think about the things that have happened over the past, 6 months, and I think that we're making good progress on each of those things. Number 2 was to put the district in the best position possible to attract, hire, and retain a quality superintendent to lead the district in the long term. I'm just going to put a check mark next to that one. The third one was to position the new superintendent for success. Working on that diligently right now. Chris has done a really wonderful job. I've had a couple meetings with Superintendent Gardner. We've got a nice transition plan put together. We have dates set out on the calendar. He'll be in the district many Fridays, most Fridays between now and the end of the school year. And we're going to do a really nice job of that part, but also some of the decisions that I make, some of the things that I do that might be hard for a superintendent to come in and do, and then, have to sort of live with over time because they're a little bit harder decision, are some things I can do. But there's also some things I can not do as a superintendent. I want to position the superintendent for success. It makes me really nervous to set something out that would be really a long-term challenging piece of work and say, here, new superintendent, now go accomplish this thing, right? As opposed to setting it up so that Superintendent Gardner has the room to choose those things and the resources and the positioning to cause those to happen over time. There are a lot of projects that are not a week or a day or a month, but are years. And those are the kind of projects that I think that the new superintendent needs to work with you all and the staff and the community to figure out what it is that those things should be, but to position up so that those things can be accomplished. And so that's part of my thinking and some things that I'm working on. Number 4 was to strengthen the commitment and understanding of equity and equitable outcomes for district students. This is a constant piece of work. I think Javier has done a really nice job of advancing the district this year and some of the work that we have to do there, but there's more to be done. And before the year is over, I'll be bringing forward a couple components of a strategic plan that can be looked at, and I'm working with the new superintendent on, because I want to make sure that anything that happens there, because it is a little bit longer term, would be something that the new superintendent would support and want to drive forward as well. And some of that will involve some equity work. Number 5 is ensure district financial stability. This one has caused a few more challenges for me this year than I thought it might, but I do think that you'll see a report tonight that will tell you that the district is in pretty decent fiscal shape, and I think probably will be. I think more or less what you'll find is we'll be able to do next year what we did this year when we take a look at the budget, and that's a position that I'm glad to have the district in. There's a lot of assumptions in what I just said, but I think it's where we are. And it's been some work to get there and have that understood well. Number 6, strengthen relationships with other organizations in the broader Albany community. So there are lots of different organizations in the community, and I think I've worked hard to try to create that, whether it's the community college or the Superintendent's Advisory Council or parents of Black students or the Chamber of Commerce. There are lots of different groups, Albany Police, for example, that I think that we've worked hard with, Boys and Girls Club. I don't want to start the list because if I leave anybody out, then they'll feel bad I didn't mention it, and I'll hurt the relationship instead of help it. And I want to make sure that we're helping it. Number 7, reduce the side noise for district educators and improve the focus on student learning. So I think there was a lot of side noise, and I think this is a place that we've made really big ground. And I think the side noise is greatly reduced, and that people are able to focus on what we should be focusing on, which is helping students be learners. And number 8, deliver a safe environment that sets the conditions for educators to do their best work. So this safety piece has a lot of different components to it, but when I wrote this, I was really talking about COVID, right? It was, how are we going to make sure that we do things that keep kids safe in our district? And I think that we worked hard and tried to be smart about that. We put things in place. We followed board directive, which, by the way, I've been really glad to have, and that we've made progress on that. And those are the 8. So they're not all done. There's still more work to be done. I've got plenty to entertain me between now and the end of June. And I'm sure that I would like to look back and think that there are some additional things that are accomplished too. But these are the 8 things that are front of mind for me as I'm trying to do my work and moving forward for the year. COVID, I want to talk a little bit about COVID. Well, we couldn't have a meeting this year without talking about COVID. The district is going to follow the lead of health officials when it comes to masking. And at this point, I believe GAPS can go mask optional beginning on March 12th. Now, it's March 11th at, I think, 11:59 is what the actual order says. In other words, a minute from March 12th. So it becomes effective statewide on March 12th. But the first day of school after that, is Monday, March 14th. So effectively for the district, it goes into play on Monday, March 14th. And we recommend that we make that change. That will be a change that will come to our district on that day. It'll be mask optional. Federal laws requiring masks on buses will likely go away at the same time and allow for mask optional there as well. There seems to be a little bit of a debate on that, and we'll be coming out with that more specifically, but I think that will be the case at this point. It'll also be important to respect the decisions people make about masking. If someone chooses to wear a mask, they should be able to do that without harassment or challenge. And the same should be true if someone chooses not to wear a mask. Our tolerance for negative behavior about the issue is going to be really short. There's no reason for anybody to get tense with someone who chooses to wear a mask or chooses not to wear a mask. And so it will be our expectation. And I know that it's a place where we will fall short. Somebody's going to be upset on the 14th because they wore a mask and somebody said something to them, or they didn't wear a mask and somebody said something to them. That doesn't mean it's going to be okay. Our tolerance for that is going to be short. It's our expectation that it's mask optional and that people will respect the decisions that people decide to make about that. At some point in the next couple of days, I anticipate that the Oregon Department of Education will release new rules and options for districts in regard to COVID. We anticipate the end of required contact tracing, and therefore will have no need for the test to stay program. Now, I don't know that for certain. It's what I believe to be true based on some different conversations that I've had. And that would be appropriate, and it would be the direction that the district would take should that be allowable by the state. One rule the state adopted as permanent is 33-19-1030, requiring school staff, paid and unpaid, to be vaccinated or have an exemption. That's a permanent rule. The district is expected to set mitigation measures for these staff. And our mitigation measures will be to have a continuation of required weekly testing in the near term. In addition, after consulting our district health experts, I have decided that these staff will no longer be required to wear a mask as of March 12th and into the foreseeable future. There are a few special circumstances that will continue to require masks. A few staff working directly with our medically fragile students will wear masks and be required to do so, as will staff in our half dozen or so FSC functional skills classrooms. The only other exception will involve students or staff who have COVID, must isolate for 5 days, and then when they return to school need to be symptom-free, but are still required to wear masks for an additional 5 days by Oregon law. So I could return on the 6th day or the 7th day, whatever the case may be. Out to 10 days, I'll be required to wear a mask upon my return. We also have some students and staff who are immunocompromised. For these individuals, we have secured an opportunity paid for by OHA that will deliver weekly PCR testing through WVT labs in Corvallis. Staff and students can sign up for the program, and we can begin delivery prior to March 19th. We're not done with this, but we seem to be getting closer. I think there's a natural progression that comes with heading into this and leaving it, and this is part of that. I do want to thank the board for their consistent direction and message on COVID since August. You all have been incredibly consistent, and actually, I remember at the time when you had the discussion and made the decision, I thought it was a really interesting decision that then created consistency long-term. We always knew where we were going to be because of what it is that you chose to do. And it's created a predictability for the district that's been really rare over the course of the pandemic. In all instances, with all parts of government and with other school districts, your decision-making on this was right on. And I think it's helped us avoid some of the conflict and anxiety that we've seen in other districts. And I just want to thank you for that. It's made my job easier. I think it has calmed our community, and it's created predictability in our schools. So thank you for that. That's all I have this evening, unless there are questions or comments.
Mr. Superintendent, I do have a question. You mentioned required weekly testing for non-vaccinated paid or volunteered staff. Is that a state requirement that we're being consistent with, or is that a one-off that you're?
Director Nyquist, great question. The law 33-19-1030 requires additional mitigation on the part of unvaccinated staff for school districts. And so there's a breadth of possibility. One of the things that we did say here is that those staff are not going to be required to wear masks, which is the scarlet letter of, I didn't get vaccinated, right? And so that was one of the things that we remove. And if we remove that from our toolbox, there's virtually nothing left except for the PCR test. And so we have those. It's a pretty simple process that we have all the requirements worked out for in the district. And it seems like the rational decision for us to make. It's confidential, and it's something that we can continue on with between now and the end of the school year, unless that permanent rule becomes impermanent.
Okay. So I understand it's your opportunity or duty to set those, how you're going to mitigate that. I would just ask you to consider, and I'm not looking for a conversation about it tonight, but for those that have gotten COVID, that have proof of the antibody present, whether you will or will not acknowledge or address that. So I just ask you to consider.
And Director Nyquist, just real quick, yes, we will acknowledge that. Anybody who's had it doesn't need to follow that process for 90 days. And so if we have, and we do have actually a large number of those, folks who actually got COVID, and part of the reason we know is because they did these weekly tests. And so we actually have a valid PCR test that tells us that did happen. And so their status then for 90 days is as vaccinated.
Thank you for that.
You bet.
I do have one more. I don't know if this is the area, but it's COVID, so I'll raise it. As policymakers, we're only as good as the information we have before us when we make that decision. I think that there's a situation tomorrow for the Benton County Board of Commissioners. As I understand it, they're taking up the issue of whether or not to set their own standards above or aside from the state standards. Might it be appropriate for us to ask the superintendent and delegate authority to write to the Benton County Board of Commissioners, letting them know of where we are and what we intend to do, and ask them to consider our situation for the North Albany schools, the schools in Benton County, and give us the opportunity to square up what we're doing throughout the district, and at least in North Albany to be consistent with what we're trying to do with the rest of the district. I can restate that if it didn't make sense to you all.
I think we can just concur.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's the sense of the board.
All right, given that I see head nods and so forth, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Wilson? Mr. Thompson? Dr. Morris? I would just, thank you so much, sir. Our trajectory for what we know ahead is clear. Parents know what to expect. And your communications officer has just struck it out of the park. I mean, it saves you a lot of phone calls from us, and because it's very clear, it's a direct message. And I know all parents get that, so it's a big compliment to your departments.
Thank you. So this is a piece of data that came across my desk today. I think it's interesting. I think 3 weeks ago in the district, we had, I think it was 385 COVID cases over the course of a week at the peak of Omicron. Last week, we had 27. And we still are in the diminishing phase here. And so, as we move into a couple weeks out, I anticipate that number will be even significantly lower. So those are important data pieces for us to know. Thank you.
I also need to clarify an agenda change. We are canceling the second executive session for tonight. It's not going to take place. It'll be rescheduled for a different date. The board did meet in executive session earlier tonight, which will be coming up on our agenda shortly.
I just want to say, again, a shout out to the communications. That has been great. I hear from parents all the time about that. Thank you, Michelle. That is awesome. That's been a real gain. So thank you.
That will bring us to board liaison reports. Gentlemen?
Yeah, I actually had a really great meeting with one of the local employers in town and was just discussing CTE and some of the things that we can do. And they have a huge need for employees, and they're looking to hire 10, 15 high school graduates at family wage jobs if they have the skill level. And so I'm hoping that we can set up here in the near future, and I read that there's going to be one, but a virtual employer workshop. But I'd like to get some hands-on, have them bring some parts in, see if we can't get some students who are not going to be going to college interested in going to work for our local companies. And so I'm hopeful that's going to come together. I'm working on it, and hopefully by the next meeting I'll have a little more to report.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to say I'm going to be at the board meeting for Lynn Benton Parents Advisory Council. Natalie Pisano has helped me with that. I guess it's on Zoom, but I'm looking forward to hearing from parents in that community.
And mine is the Albany Public School Foundation is coming up with its iRun on March 12th. There's still time to volunteer and time to sign up to be a runner. It is a great event that helps us with tremendously with scholarships. So move to H2, board member reports.
Yeah, at the last, I was not a part of it, but I've heard a discussion at the last listening session. The fact was brought up that in 2021, the legislature passed Senate Bill 732, which requires school districts to create an educational equity advisory committee. Now, the language says 10,000 and up, and I think we're not quite 10,000, but I think in the spirit of that bill, I think we should talk about creating something like that. I've been thinking with the tremendous response we got during the superintendent's search and during the budget committee that we've got people who want to do things, who want to help, and this fell into our lap. So I don't have a motion, I don't have anything, but I think a process similar to the budget committee or something like that, we should start thinking about having this in place by next fall.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
My offhand suggestion would be the chair and the vice chair come up with something.
Dr. Morse?
I don't have anything.
A big congratulations. I hired a new front desk person at my work this week, and they're doing great. And she came up to me and said, "Hey, you handed me my diploma last year," and it was great to see kind of the return on investment for one of our graduates to kind of jump into the finance industry for a Fortune 500 company where the sky's the limit for her. So it is really cool to see the fruits of your labor come. So that's great. And student board member reports.
Hello. Okay. So I'm going to talk about some things that are going on in leadership, band news, sports, and about a thing that happened not too long ago, and I just wanted to put it up there. Here, let me pull it up really quick. So I put this on here because I thought it'd give us a laugh. We're doing a fundraiser for our senior night and for graduation and stuff. And the way we're doing it is by pie a teacher. You put $1 to vote for that teacher, and then whoever gets the most amount of votes, you get to pie them. And it's gonna be a great day, and I'm very much looking forward to this. March Madness has just started, and we will soon be able to see those teams competing, and I'm very excited to watch it. Career Day just happened, and it was last Thursday, and it was a great moment for me as a senior to just realize the type of career that I'll be going into and just get a second to realize how close I am to doing that, and it's a little scary, but I also think it gives a great moment for students just to see what's out there and the different possibilities that they may have. I did go to a real estate one where a student was an alumni for West, and it's great to see that give back to his community and being able to do that for us. So that was pretty interesting. About sports. So spring practices start today, and I know some students are very excited for that. My little brother's gonna be doing track, so I get to go to his tournaments, and I'm very excited. We just had a wrestling tournament, and I know they did really well. I don't think anyone placed that high, but it's always a great moment to just get out there and do what they can. And in band news, yesterday was a big day for South Albany. We hosted the Northwest Association of Performing Arts Indoor Percussion and Color Guard show for the first time, and this was the first show since the COVID shutdown. There were 8 color guards and 7 percussion units on our campus showing off their hard work and the starting of the season off strong. South Albany has started our indoor percussion team in the spring of 2019 and our color guard team this year, so it was a great thing for us to be able to host a tournament like this. And we are very dedicated to bringing the indoor activity to the Valley. And a way to go to our director, I'm going to say this wrong, Colorado Panigua. I apologize. Last week, there was a moment where South Albany students were able to watch a virtual event that happened at West Albany. And I believe this moment was a not very well coordinated. South Albany students didn't feel as represented through this communication that had happened. Through West and them setting it up, I'm not exactly sure how that happened. There was the speaker that came down to the auditorium, and it's such a great, I love being able to watch what I could, but sadly the tech for us shut down about the first fourth of the actual speaker going and performing, so we didn't get to watch anything other than that. We weren't able to really participate in the questions or the other things that he was asking us to do so. I know our administration really did put in the effort to get us involved in this, but sadly buses, it was set up during a time where buses cannot be going for us, so we weren't actually able to go there and be a part of the moment and be able to communicate with the speaker. So I just thought that this should be put out there in like a way for us to learn and work together as the district that we are. And like, this is a great moment where like equity is put out there, because I know some students were very disappointed at that moment, and it was just a downfall for us. So I know that speakers, we've seen it be successful with Javier. We were able to go and watch him, and that was a great speaker moment, but sadly during this time it just didn't work out that way. So I wish to see more success later on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And if you want to put those notes into an after-action report and give them to Chris, I'll make sure we get them sent to where they need to be.
Thank you.
I'm going to read Allie's statement. She's not here with us tonight, but as she says, West Albany students participated in a career day as a virtual event last Thursday. We were able to hear from a wide variety of professionals ranging from ultrasound technicians to community advocates. It was great to have an opportunity to learn about different professions in past, and extra exciting this year from students all over GAPS schools were able to attend and tune in. I'd also like to give a big shout out to West Albany students who took place in the Polar Plunge last week to fundraise for the Special Olympics. Congratulations to West Albany senior Tori Thorpe for receiving the honor of 2022 Oregon High School Journalist of the Year. You can also support West Albany's Performing Arts program by coming to see our concert tomorrow night, 3/1 at 7 p.m. at the Albany Performing Arts Center. Our winter sports are coming to a close. Our dance team took second place in 5A division. West Albany girls took the top 2 places in the state wrestling competition, and we had 2 boys placing in the top 10 for wrestling as well. Our boys swim team took second place at state, with senior Luke Melbourne taking a nearly 25-year-old record to first place in the 100 free. Go Bulldogs. With winter sports comes the beginning of spring sports, and our track, baseball, softball, lacrosse teams have already started to practice. Thank you so much. Perfect.
I do have a question, and here the senior class all-night party fundraising triggered it. I had a request. I think the senior class South wants to hold a car wash on April 12th. On or about that date at the school, and they've been told they couldn't do that because it was COVID related. I don't know. Can we fix that?
I certainly can look into it and figure
Kids-
out what's
kids-
happening. I have
kids-
no idea.
Kids want to work. They want to make money for their party. I support it 1,000%. So let's see if we can make it happen.
Yeah.
And thanks for jogging my memory.
Is that south or west?
Gentlemen, we'll move into consent agenda, and we'll start with certified. The action is to move to approve certified staff as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The second action is to approve personnel classified as presented.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And J3, contract extensions and renewals, and this is what, to the general public, this is what we covered in executive session. The action is to move, approve contract extensions and renewals as presented.
So moved. Oh, I have to recuse myself on this because my wife's a teacher.
I move to approve contract extensions and renewals as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed and abstain? Thank you. And we're going to move into special board meeting minutes. Move to approve minutes to the special board meeting on 12/16/21 as presented.
I move to approve the minutes of 12/16/21 as presented.
I second.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. We have one more set of minutes. Move to approve minutes from the regular board meeting on 1/10/22 as presented.
I move to approve the minutes of 1/10/22 as presented.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And we're going to go to K1 under old business. Move to approve Section J policies and administrative regulations as presented by the Policy Rewrite Committee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? And this is K2. Action requested by staff is to move to approve policy BDA board meeting as presented.
So moved.
Can I talk real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, we've seen this before, and I'm not really against, I mean, I just want to highlight that nothing in here precludes us from having in-person comments. What it does is create extra work for the IT folks, because they would have to figure out a way, but just as a general policy, you know, I'm fine with putting parameters. I said this before, 3 minutes. Just, when you get to talk and speak to your folks, it just means more than someone, Rob's done a great job, Superintendent Saxon's done a great job, that's not the issue, but something to think about in the future. These policies don't preclude us from doing that. Nothing precludes us from doing that.
So it's my understanding that if you're going to do that, you also have to allow opportunity to give testimony by Zoom. 3
Correct,
minutes.
yeah, some type of,
They could
it
be
talks
anywhere,
about,
they could be anywhere in the world, they could say anything they want.
we could
Is
set
that
up,
really where you want to go?
it uses the words like a reasonable accommodation, something like similar to our interpreters. You know, it would be difficult, I realize, for IT staff, but I just know so many people who, at the city and the county, you have ways to, across the country, it is your American way to come stop at your local meeting that night and give your 2 cents. And it just means so much more than a staff member reading.
So my thought would be that let's find somebody who's doing that, who's properly executing the law as we know it, and it's working, okay?
Okay.
And go from there? Does that sound
We
reasonable?
don't have to be the leaders. Yeah, this wasn't like, I just want to clarify that these, within this, it specifically says you have to do some certain steps, but it doesn't preclude you.
Right.
That's all I wanted to highlight, it doesn't preclude you.
All right.
So we're pending a second on this motion.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. This will bring us to K3 Board Policy Public Comments. I do have one edit that I addressed earlier with staff. In the bottom paragraph, Chris, where it says, written comments criticizing district staff members, we're going to change, the recommended change to district representatives.
I would move approval with the amendment.
I'd second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. That will bring us to Ms. Harlan. Your time.
Great, thank you. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board, tonight you will review the academic progress report for grades 9 through 12. If you'll recall previously, you saw the academic progress report for K through 8. That included some benchmark assessment data and some attendance data. Looking at the high school data, it will look a little different than the elementary assessment data did. We'll be looking at on-track and attendance. So just an overview of the assessments of academics that are used at the high school level. We use on-track data by grade level. And on-track means that students at a particular grade level have earned the number of credits they would need to be on track for on-time graduation within 4 years. We also look internally as a district team, grade distributions in core classes. So for example, if you know the percentage of students that are failing a class that's required for graduation, English or math, that can tell you something about what you might need in terms of support and intervention. There are no internal benchmark assessments for high school in grades 9 through 12. Historically, there is a summative state assessment that is given 1 year, and that is the 11th grade year. This year's data we compared to 18-19 after the first semester. So looking at the credits that were earned by students after the first semester in comparison to the 18-19, and we'll also look at some attendance data. So this is on-track data. And it will include some percentages around students who are on track.
Speak
And
closer to the mic, I can't hear.
so what you will see is some data around on track first for all grades. So let me orient you to this chart. On the left is AOS, our Albany Option School. In the middle is South Albany High School, and then West Albany High School. The colored bars show in blue the average attendance rate of a student who is on track in 18-19. Then the average attendance rate of a student who is on track to graduate in 21-22. You'll then go on to look at the average attendance rate of a student who was not on track to graduate in 18-19 as compared to 21-22. And then you'll have the total percentage of students in 18-19 at that school on track to graduate and the total percentage of students in 21-22. So this is a big picture of an entire school. Again, one thing to note for those people who might not be aware, Albany Option School is an alternative high school. The way that you get there is usually because you're not on track to graduate, you're credit deficient. And so you should just take that into account when you're looking at their on-track percentages. When we look at grades 9 and 10, you'll see that Albany Options is not included because historically they have only had juniors and seniors at that school. So for example, for South Albany High School in 18-19 school year, 79% of their students after the first semester were on track. In the 21-22 school year, 67% of all of their students are on track to graduate after the first semester. For West Albany High School in 18-19, 91.75% of all of their students were on track to graduate after semester 1. And this year in 21-22, 81.25% of their students are on track to graduate after the first semester. The second table that you'll see here is by demographic. So we're looking at, again, comparing 18-19 to 21-22, and what percentage, and this is all grades again, of each of these groups of students are on track to graduate. So our 5.0 students who are on a 504, our students who are limited English proficient, our tag students, our students who are receiving EL services, English language services, students who are served by an IEP, that is special education and individual education plan, and then the last is our economically disadvantaged students. What you can see, for example, I'll just take any of them there. So our students on IEPs, for South Albany, 18-19, 64% were on track. This year, 47.81 are. For West Albany, 81% were on track. This year, 63.51% are. So that's by student group. And then the next data table will show you, again, it's all grades, and it's by race or ethnicity. Again, we have AOS, South Albany and West Albany, and it broken down. So for example, at West Albany in 18-19, 86.79% of our Hispanic students were on track to graduate. This year, it's 68.97%. Our Native students at West Albany, that were 71% on track to graduate in 18-19, and this year it's 42%. So it's the all grades on track, broken down by race and ethnicity. So that's the aggregate, the all. Now we're going to get into grade level on track data. So we're going to compare 9th grade to 9th grade, 10th grade to 10th grade. So this graph, again, is similar to the first, except that it's just for 9th grade only. You'll see Albany Options is not included. It also includes the average attendance rate. What's interesting is to see the average attendance rate for a student who was on track in 18-19 was 93.95%. It's kind of hard to see. And the average rate for an on-track student this year is 92.29, so they're pretty close. The average rate, attendance rate for a student not on track in 18-19, though, was 79.93% at South. And this year, the average attendance rate for a not on track freshman, 9th grader, is actually 82.61%. So one of the interesting trends that we've seen, and this is for both high schools, is that actually students who are not on track actually have better attendance this year than they did in 18-19, and they are still not on track. The overall for 18-19 for freshmen at South Albany High School, 74% were on track after the first semester. This year, 62% are on track after the first semester. And at West Albany High School in 18-19, 85.51% were on track after the first semester. And this year, 80% of their freshmen are on track after the first semester. Similarly, we have 10th grade. Now that you've oriented yourself to the chart, you can see it follows the same pattern. The average attendance rate for students who are not on track is actually higher than it was in 18-19, and far fewer students are on track after the first semester. It goes from 72 to 62, and at West for 10th grade, it goes from 93.73% on track in 18-19 to 71.94% of 10th graders this year. For 11th grade, now we see Albany Options included because they have 11th and 12th graders. Again, a mechanism of getting to Albany Options is that you are credit deficient or behind, and so I would want people to take that into account when they look at their on-track data. For 11th graders at South Albany High School, 67.47% are on track, and 81.82% of 11th graders after the first semester at West Albany High School are on track. You'll see the data there as compared to 18-19. And this is seniors, this year seniors after first semester. We have 78% at South Albany as compared to 91 in 18-19, and 92.55% at West as compared to 95% in 18-19. One of the things that you'll notice is a considerable effort by the high schools towards the later part of students' career to make sure to get them on track, right? So you see this big jump. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there is a natural mathematical jump that will happen at 11th grade by virtue of having Albany Options. So if you have as 10th graders a group of students who are not on track to graduate, some of them then their 11th grade year go to Albany Options, and so your on-track percentage as a high school will naturally jump by about 5% your 11th grade and 12th grade year. So I would take that into consideration, and that's why you see Albany Options included on the graphs for 11th and 12th grade. So the data that you just looked at now is in tables. So if you want to see exact percentages and to see year to year and what that looks like, this is now in table format. And I understand that it's a lot because what you're comparing is not only average attendance rate, but of those who are on track, those who are not on track, and the total percentage of students at that grade level. And again, we have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So we took the aggregate and then we got specific into groups of students and then specific into grade levels. So what does this look like kind of moving forward? One, I would say, again, having multi-tiered systems and structures throughout the organization is going to be key. We currently don't have necessarily either benchmark data or really robust internal systems at the high school level to be able to say, what are the early warning systems and what does that look like as a system? Individual schools might have it, but not necessarily systemically. Having a really robust transition program from 8th to 9th grade for all middle schools and high schools is going to be really key. We know that there are things that we have done in the past, like flight summer school or opportunities to allow at-risk 8th graders to start school early, earn some credit, a half credit before school starts so that they're kind of ahead, have been successful, and looking at expanding those is going to be key. Some of the same things that you'll see in terms of extended learning time and opportunities absolutely are going to be key. We have summer school programs both right at the end of school that are geared towards credit recovery, and then before school starts again in August, before activities start up, that will be necessary and that we'll need to look at expanding. The other thing I would say, and I hearkening back to one of the public comments around how do you ensure that there is kind of fidelity and consistency across a system. When you hear those things, what you'll see are things like guaranteed and viable curriculum, access to interventions, and implementing research-based structures across the system. What you should see at both the high schools are similar structures around that, so that we know when students are behind, when students need help, and what we would apply as a strategy. Some of those strategies at the high school level certainly are AVID and QTEL, and seeing both of those things at both high schools will be important. And then again, really, the work into the future is going to be looking at shoring up PLCs. The number one impact on student learning is collective efficacy, and that's teacher collective efficacy. I appreciate that we have opportunities for language arts adoption this year and math next year because it will give us an opportunity to align curriculum more fully K-12. We have not adopted a new language arts curriculum in 14 years in this district. And so we'll do that for K-8 this year and 9 through 12 next year. And I think that's an exciting opportunity. I will take questions at this time.
So just, I guess the 30,000-foot question, where we are, particularly with 9th graders, 10th graders. Last presentation we had, I left that thinking that the key to all of that, our problems were lack of consistent attendance. And the information tonight indicates otherwise.
No, I think attendance is certainly a concern that we have across the district, just in terms of our average daily attendance rate. But what we call our chronic absenteeism rate is high. You can refer back to some of the graphs that we saw the first time. So I do think that is a concern. But I also think we have a considerable amount of work to look at some of the programs and systems at the high school specifically for 9th and 10th grade. It is much easier to get a 9th grader on track to graduate when they're missing 1 credit than it is to get a junior when they're missing 6. And so having 9th and 10th programs and options to help support them while they're in the class that they're in, it's much easier to support a student who's struggling in a class than to have to offer another section of that class next semester because you had so many who failed. And so when you have schools that are consistently looking at that grade distribution and that rate to know what percentage of our students are not doing well? And you can see it by grade level and by content. Is it math? Is it science? Is it language arts? It's much easier to intervene then than it is to wait until they've failed the class or have to repeat the class.
Okay? And so there's systems and there's processes and there's kids. And there's kids that are behind right now. And I want them to not be behind tomorrow. And I know that's not realistic. As I remember the conversation last time we talked about this, I guess my takeaway was we're doing everything we can.
I think
Go
in
ahead.
elementary and middle school, we certainly have the path in place for what needs to happen in terms of implementation to move that dial. I think with high school, there are some things that we could get tighter about. One of the things, for example, for summer programs, we were able to offer to students last year in middle school and high school the opportunity to take both summer camps and classes at LBCC free of charge through grant opportunities that we had. We will do the same thing this summer as another attempt to be able to offer opportunities to high school students to be able to earn both college credit and high school credit. But there are things within the school year and within the school day that we'll have to do a considerable lift to try and get kiddos on track to graduate, which means you have to recover credits. You have to recover credits from courses.
So one of the things about this is we're keeping a different kind of score, right, than we were at the elementary level. At the elementary level, we're looking at attendance in a little bit different way than what we looked at it tonight, and we've got these assessments that, and we have kids take 3 times a year, where we can look at and compare them to sort of a grade level on track, if you will. Here, we're talking about how many credits kids have earned, and we got some work to do, right, when it comes to catching kids up on the number of credits that they have earned and that they need to earn. And part of it, I mean, just really and truly, part of it is the last 2 years haven't been great on credit earning. We've got, so on track, just to be more specific about it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Assistant Superintendent Harlan, and that would be that a student would have earned 6 credits by the end of their freshman year or 3 by semester. So it's 3 and then 6 at the end of the year, 9 mid-year as a sophomore, 12 at the end of their sophomore year. And so it's basically in increments of 3 and 24 credits at the end of their senior year. And so we've got kids in school who are sophomores this year that earned 1 credit as a freshman and have earned every credit that's been presented to them this semester. And they have 4 credits, and they're not on track, right? It's not that they're doing a poor job this year. They're actually doing a really good job this year, but they got behind, and we need to present mechanisms where they can catch up. The good news is that both of our high schools offer more credits in a year than are required to be on track. South Albany offers 7 credits a year. West Albany offers 8 credits a year. And so if in fact a kid at West is an even number, so I'll do that one. If a kid at West Albany earned 1 credit as a freshman and passed everything now, they'd have 5 credits, but they still would show up as not on track, right? By the end of the year, if they earn 4 more credits, then they'll be at 9, and they still won't be on track, right? They've got some work to do. So, we can keep working on that in junior and senior year. So the thing that we need to do is make sure that we have a really good transition program. Excuse me, something in my throat. Really good transition program from 8th grade to 9th grade. We need a good early warning system. We need to make sure that we have kids who are coming in as freshmen who have credit earning opportunities in the summer between their 8th grade and 9th grade year and learn some of the skills that they're going to need to have in order to be successful as they move into high school. And then we need to have really strong tracking systems for how kids are doing and make sure that they understand the credits that need to be earned and have the best opportunity possible to get those credits picked up. Part of that is just really close tracking And both of our high schools have really good tracking systems in place, and these kids are not going unnoticed. When you have the percentages or the numbers that we have right now, it makes it a little bit harder, right? If only 10% of your kids are not on track, there's a few kids to take care of. If 25% of your kids aren't, it becomes exponentially more difficult. And so it's really important for us to offer summer school opportunities to get kids in those opportunities so that they get some more credits between now and the start of the next school year, both academically for some of what they missed and also for the credit-bearing opportunity that comes with that. So those are all parts of it. It's going to be a really heavy lift.
One of the things I would point out too, just mathematically speaking, and Superintendent Saxton kind of mentioned it, when you look at the differences, a lot of times people want to look at the differences between the two comprehensive high schools, and one is higher and one is lower, and why is that? There are lots of reasons, but one of the mathematical reasons is if you only have the opportunity to earn 7 credits and you need, 3 or 6, or you have the opportunity to earn 8 credits, that makes a difference. So I have the opportunity, I could fail a class and take it again and still be on track. So not to bring up kind of a sore subject, but that's part of the issue with school schedules. If one school schedule allows me the opportunity to earn 32 credits before I graduate, and one offers me the opportunity to only earn 28 credits before I graduate, the percentage of students that you have on track will be different because the number of sections that you have to offer based on how many kids weren't successful in that math class, for example, are limited, are different.
Is it reasonable to hope and expect that we don't have kids flunking classes?
I think it's always a good hope. Do I think that all kids learn at the same rate? No. Do I think that some kids might need to do it again to solidify? Yes. But you have to account for that in your system, and there are ways to do that. But certainly, I would always hope it for all kids, and I understand that what kids need to get there might be different. So the inputs might have to be different. It might have to be more. It might have to be more intense. It might have to be more scaffolded. But the outputs can absolutely be the same.
So it's early in the second half of the year, if you will. So we really, unless you do know, we really don't know where we are in that second half in the way of whether or not kids are starting off and moving in a place they need to be. We really don't know that we're any better than we were in the first half.
It's hard to tell. We can and do examine grade distribution data, but as a mother of a high school junior, it's hard to tell because you might come out swinging and a couple of missing assignments later, not so much, or vice versa. So it's pretty early to tell for this semester. But we certainly look at it at the end of every year and the end of every semester.
I also know, and this will just be, it'll be very small increment, that, we've been working with kids who have some incompletes from the first semester and making sure that those credits get earned if they have an opportunity to do that. So we've looked at the data about how many incompletes are in the system. So you're not going to see a big bump, but there'll be a small adjustment that gets made between now and when kids get those completed, which is today. It was the last day that they had the opportunity to do that. And if I understand that correctly. And I also am looking at, senior numbers at both high schools. And, let's face it, there'll be a really big push between now and the end of the year with those senior kids to make sure that they're going to have the credits that they need in order to graduate. And I do think that you'll see both the numbers at both South and West increase by a fair amount between now and the end of the school year for our seniors. The class that gives me the most pause right now is our sophomore class. And part of it is that they're into their second year, of something that wasn't completely typical. And I think we see part of that showing up in this. And so, we're going to have to really focus with that group of kids and all of them really, but they're the group that sort of makes me furrow my forehead a little bit.
So it feels to me like, and you'll tell me I'm wrong and you'll tell me why and I'll be glad to hear it, but it feels to me like we're operating a system. Is it absent of the acknowledgement that the last 2 years kids weren't in classrooms and it was distance learning and both the level of performance and the quality of learning were different?
I mean, I think it's fair to say that the last 2 years have had an impact on everybody. Students, teachers, certainly us as adults. In terms of the impact on credit and credit earning for the high school, I think both high schools would tell you it certainly had an impact. In terms of the quality of learning, I think it certainly had an impact. What that impact was, I think, is really dependent on the child, honestly, and who you talk to. I think that, again, having opportunities and more opportunities for kids to recoup credit and opportunities to support them before they lose that class, that credit, are going to be the keys.
I have more questions, but I'll yield for now. Director
Well,
Thompson.
I have a real simple question. This is all in percent. Like, how big is and you don't have to give me the exact answer, but how big is a high school class?
About 300.
About 300?
Per high school.
High school, yeah.
So some classes are smaller than others. So your
Sure,
12th grade
sure.
class might be
Just trying to wrap my-
320, your
That-
9th grade
that's
class
per high
is
school.
350 per high school, yeah.
Just trying to wrap my head around how many, like, actual number of kids we're talking about. It seems like,
Quite a few.
yeah, it does. It is quite a few. It is quite a few. Decline in general, and then when you look in, I just loved how things are broken down. Serious declines in some of the areas when you look at it that way. And I just wanted to get an idea of how many kids we're talking about.
So just as an example, I looked this up, so it might not be completely accurate for right now today, but it was last week. So the percentages of students, for example, at South Albany High School on IEPs for this year, it says 47%. South Albany has, I believe, around 225 students on IEPs in special education. So just to give you a scope of kind of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Mr. Morse?
I think this data shows there's a lot of work to be done. We know that. Attendance is a big issue. We need to get the kids in school to get them to learn. COVID has caused some issues with that. Some changes have been made to how we track that. I think we need to do all we can to get them back in school, all we can to find the children and students who need to get the extra time and track them and give them the extra resources they need to meet the requirements or meet the expectations at the different grade levels. And also, we need to have a system in place that allows us to hold accountability to a certain extent. We want to give all the tools we can to kids to meet the bar and give them extra time and resources. But if we've done that for a few years and that hasn't worked with that child, we got to find something else. And we need our children leaving the high school at an academic level that they can have success in society.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm really concerned that how we've handled this as a society, the pandemic, is going to have some really long-lasting effects that we aren't going to see for a while. And I can see in the short term a real benefit of summer school and being able to get kids caught up. We're going to have to give that great effort and focus on the fundamentals. We've got to get their math, their reading skills up to speed so they can compete in the future. Because if not, their lives are going to be absolutely, their earning potential is going to be harmed, and they're going to struggle. And we're going to, at that point in time, I'm going to feel like I've failed them. So I want to, I'd like to see what we can do going forward to help them to create some summer school opportunities with strong encouragement to the parents to get them there, because we have some ground to be made up, and it's evident in the numbers. Thank you.
I got a couple questions for you. So missing credits are because of failed classes, no showing, or both?
Those are essentially the same thing. It's a failed class.
Okay, did they get an F in the class because they didn't comprehend the work?
That would probably be a student-by-student basis, could be both. Most likely, you get an F in the class because you didn't turn in your homework. If you didn't turn in your homework because you didn't understand or you weren't there, I couldn't tell you by looking at the data, but you don't get credits if you fail a class. That's how that happens.
But 50% sometimes for showing up.
No,
At the high school, at the middle school level. Gotcha. Hispanic and IEP students dramatically lost a lot of points, a lot of percentages, especially at South Albany, particularly South Albany. What are we doing specifically to intervene right now for Hispanic and IEP students?
You want me to answer that? Yeah, I would say, similarly to what we're doing for other students, which is credit recovery opportunities, all of our students who are on IEPs, I shouldn't say all, I should say most, according to their individual education plan, have support in special education that's specifically geared towards helping them do well in their classes, right? So that they don't fail their classes and earn credit in those classes. The same is not true for our Hispanic students. It would be true for our ELs. I would have to ask South Albany specifically. I know we certainly have programs for students to feel belonging in the school, and certainly programs like AVID are very successful, specifically for our Hispanic students and specifically for some of our underserved students. And having a strong AVID program, I think, has been the key to some of their success previously.
Is there specific hardships that these two groups have faced over the last year that we can help break down barriers if there's technology needs, if there's more one-on-one time?
Absolutely. We know that the pandemic disproportionately impacted our students of color and certainly disproportionately impacted our students who were already struggling. And so that bears out in our data for sure. We certainly did work with our FACT and our Welcome Center specific towards making sure that if there were barriers like technology, like childcare, any of transportation, those things, that we could break down those barriers. And we still have a lot that we need to do and could do both at the school level and the district level.
Esperanza had her hand up.
We just recently started Red Hawk Rising again too, which targets students who are failing classes. And I know that has been helping some, and it doesn't even have to be students who are failing, but students who may feel like they need that extra help. And it's a great program just to go to, and it gives you that moment to ask for help if you need it, because teachers are there who can specifically help you with that assignment.
It just concerns me because these are already vulnerable students, and to see them drop 15 points on graduating on time. And then what major interventions are we doing to improve attendance?
We currently don't have any district-wide campaign or attendance campaign. There was one that we started actually pre-pandemic, and Ross Davis at the ESD was working with local districts around that, and you might have seen some things. It was Everyday Matters, and it was a specific campaign both for our district and our surrounding districts around attendance because it had been an issue. And so looking at what are ways that we can kind of pick that back up, certainly with support from the ESD will be important, but attendance is a huge issue right now.
And I remember the 24J everyday signs. And
Yep. I would say, one of the things that we've done this year as well is we've increased our fax support in terms of literally the number of social workers that we have, the number of nurses that we have, to be able to make sure that if there are barriers that we can help with, that we're trying to eliminate them as much as possible.
These are just huge. And I'm not saying the superintendents are at fault. Please don't.
We are
But
as
these-
concerned.
Yeah, I mean, these are huge percentages. I mean, none of us business owners would hire an employee that's only going to show up 63% of the time.
In this market?
Still. So, I mean, I would like to see next quarter some kind of sorry, was it a hand up? What the district's plan is to do major intervention for attendance, because it's really bad. Anyone else?
I think Heather had her hand up.
Zefka?
Good.
Thank you. I just want to make a few comments as we enter into hiring season and with the goals that the district board has, district leadership, our teachers, all of our staff, for our students to be successful personally, academically, to have choices in their life. One of the things that I want us to hopefully keep our eye on the ball is that even though we're back in person, the impact on teenagers, preteens, feeling disconnected when we were in the virtual world to coming back. I still think that's a really heavy lift for kids who are still growing, figuring out who they are, finding their place in the world. I'm really proud of the commitments this district has made towards increasing our nurses, towards increasing our FACT, towards the counselors in the elementary schools, instructional coaches to help teachers who are working with kids who are struggling in their class. So the center of it is our classroom teachers working with kids right there in the center, and the support systems we have for the mental health of our students and the mental health of our staff. I think we have a lot of students who present as doing okay that might still very well be struggling a lot. Where that plays into the data, I don't know. But I do believe our staff are looking to the heart of how our kids are holding on. And we've got some that are struggling more than that. It may not be the academic understanding it. It could just be, I'm struggling in life still. And I'm proud of our district for wanting to invest in that part of our students as well. We need healthy human beings that are academically, emotionally, successful.
And I don't think the board thinks that it's the staff. We're trying to get kiddos to come back full-time.
It's a
That's the struggle.
situation we're in.
Would be remiss if I didn't mention as well that Albany Options, while it's historically been a 11th and 12th grade program, we actually expanded this year to include 10th grade first semester, and we'll include 9th and 10th grader second semester. And so as a result of that, they, expanded in that building. But to expand that program, it's been a wildly successful school, providing smaller environments for students who need it. And so, and that came at a cost, certainly, for the district to expand that. But Albany Options expanding 9 through 12 will provide some support to the comprehensive high schools and for students in those grades who need it.
I had more questions. I yielded, but I'm back. So first, I want to say I believe everybody's doing the best we can, and we're just here having this honest conversation
For sure.
that we need to have. And one of the questions I would have is, do we have any idea what's happening in other districts?
Similar.
Okay.
So I would say other districts, and I can certainly yield to Superintendent Saxton. I know he speaks with area superintendents and the superintendents of the big districts frequently. But we see two trends. One, the trend around attendance is something that's mirrored throughout the state. And the second is the trend on track and that dip. In my experience, when I look at other data from around the state that's available, it's usually around 10 to 12%, somewhere along. Some are less, that's the average, right? So some are less, some are more, but.
Okay, thank you. So my next question was, what's the difference between an F and an, when do kids get a chance to make up that F and improve it, and when do they not? Is that just teacher by teacher? Does it depend on curriculum? How's that work, and is there a window of opportunity to change that, to give kids a better chance of not getting Fs?
And Director Nyquist, I don't know that I know enough to answer that question for our two high schools here. And so I can get that information and bring it back to you. I'd be happy to do that. One of the things I would want you to know is that, for a lot of years in looking at the high schools in Albany, one of the things that I've always been impressed with is the way that the high schools have done a really nice job of tracking individual kids and intervening on an individual basis. And knowing those kids and doing everything that they can to support them and help them make advancements. I think if you look at our graduation rates over time and our attendance rates over time, that you would see that they've been really successful at that. I do think that when we look at this data, it's been a rough year and a half. And I know that they still have the same systems in place that they've had previously, and that they're working those as hard as they can, and that they're going to continue to do that. And I think that you'll start to see some turnaround. And so I have faith in that, and I have faith in the people that we have. But I also want to recognize that, it gets hard to dig out of a spot, right? And it's going to take a lot of work and a fair amount of support to get there. And so I just think we need to recognize that and know that The systems that they have in place have been successful in the past. We need to make sure that they have what they need to get it done.
Well, we can recognize it, but can't we make adjustments based on the inputs we're getting?
For sure. And we should.
Yeah, we'll have to because the systems we've had in the past are designed to intervene with, 10 to 15% of students. And what we're seeing now are the percentage is greater and those systems don't have the capacity to do that in the same way. We'll have to adjust.
And so we'll get like some of those ideas or concepts at our next meeting? When and how and what adjustments are we going to make?
Yeah, so I've had an opportunity to meet with high school principals a couple times and just talk about this, and we'll bring back some ideas.
Okay, that would be great. And so then it's my last question, I promise, on this subject. So I've heard a lot about summer school. Do we have a program and plan in place, and does the public know about it? Right now, if a parent knows their kid is going to need summer school, can they rely on what classes will be offered, when the schedule is, when it starts, when it ends?
I would ask Superintendent Sexton to get more specific information from the high schools, but I can tell you typically what happens is the high schools run a summer school program and contact individual students who are in need, right? And it's generally speaking it's 2 weeks after, and it's not necessarily an additional course, but an opportunity to complete coursework in classes that they took and failed or haven't been complete in. Because a lot of times you don't have to take the entire course over. You were just missing part of it. And if I did that part of it, I would receive a grade and credit. And so the high schools have that. Both high schools have that kind of summer program. It's not necessarily a program where they say, hey, we're having summer school these days and these weeks. Whoever wants to come. It's pretty specific for what credits that you need and how you're going to earn them. In terms of the big district programs that we'll have through LB, through summer school magnets for K-8. Those will be advertised, and we'll try to advertise them in the way that parents know kind of all of the different offerings. And I know those district partners will also be advertising. But it's important to know that any junior or senior this summer, so you're going into your junior year, you're going into your senior year, can take a class at LB that is paid for, the class and the books that you'll need for credit, along with summer camps that they'll be offering as well.
It would be really neat if we could have that formatted and available as a resource for parents, for kids, by the time they went to spring break. I know I'm not asking for much. It's a couple weeks, maybe when they come back from spring break, but I think the sooner the better.
One of the things that we know high schools do as well is target students who are not on track to be able to say, hey, if you sit down with your counselor and they say, you need a math credit or an English language arts credit, and here is the course catalog for the summer, there is this class out at LB that you could take and it would count as this credit. So there is a fair amount of individualization that needs to happen, but certainly we'll be doing advertising as well, just for anyone who's interested. LB does a great job of offering really interesting courses and really interesting fun summer camps as well for middle school and for high school. They had some fun topics last year that would just be enjoyable just to take as a kid, and they're in half-day or full-day style programs.
Thank you.
Can the district compel students to attend summer school?
No.
Do we make it a mandate?
I mean,
No.
we could certainly make compulsory attendance like currently exists, and it would be the same.
But, so you could make it compulsory in summer school?
As compulsory as this attendance is. Every day, there is compulsory attendance in the state of Oregon, is what I'm saying. So
Okay.
no, you couldn't mandate summer school, for example. If they didn't show, what would you do? Just not award them credit that they didn't have anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a whole bunch of mandates somebody should have been asking that question.
Any further questions? Okay, would you guys, gentlemen, mind if we take a 5-minute recess? Thank you.
Oh, this
Okay, so what was presented to you in the board packet is the projected revenue and expenditure statement for the general fund for this fiscal year. These are estimates based on known costs and historic trends. As you can see from the statement, that the ending fund balance will be $9.2 million as opposed to the budget of 9.97. This still results in an ending fund balance of about 8%. So the bottom section of this is the expenditures by function, and this is a consolidated look at the expenditures as by object. And what you can see there is that a supplemental budget will be needed at some point during the year. It's a normal process. It's for any of those things that are over expended. So if there's any other questions or information that you'd like to see going forward, please let me know, and we will include that in next month's report.
So tell me, what are we really happy about and what are we cautionary about on this report?
So we've had an increase in the revenues from what we expected. You know, I think the state school fund has been increased. We have some things where we've had supplemental payrolls, new items that we've discussed in board meetings here that have increased our expenditures. And there's a couple other items along that nature that have increased. I know we have a potential transfer for a bond levy that needed to be recovered. But that we're working through that process to determine exactly how much is needed. But those are pretty much the good thing and the bad thing. And it looks like we're gonna come in right around what we expected for the ending fund balance.
Perfect. Yeah, I remember the goal was always to at least have 5%, so 8.
Correct.
8 is great. Gentlemen, any other questions? Michael?
Go ahead.
Well, no, I just detail here, there's 13 million on one line from beginning fund balance that comes in the third quarter on here, and then we expect it to be, is that what we carried? We don't carry over
That's
that
just the
much.
that's what is gonna carry over, and it's a little bit less than that because of some of the audit entries that we need to do. But
Okay.
that's the budget that we're carrying over for, that's the ending fund balance that
Oh,
we're
okay,
carrying
that's
over
the
from
actual,
last year.
that's the, okay,
Yeah, it'll be a little lower than that, but like I said, this is unaudited, so.
okay, okay.
Mr. Nyquist?
So when you say we have about an 8% ending fund balance, that's good. Were the federal funds we've gotten separate from that, or does that include those federal funds?
For the general fund, yes. Are you talking the ESSER funds and those sort of things?
Right.
No, those are not included.
Those are separate
Yeah,
from
those
that.
are reimbursable costs, yes.
What do we have left in that balance? Any idea?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can give you that
Okay,
information.
I don't need it tonight. And then another concern I have, we've not yet gone through a budget cycle,
Correct?
but when the, whatever we're calling, when the business tax was implemented that created.
Corporate
the-
act.
The cat
Corporate-
tax.
Yep, the corporate activity tax?
Right.
Yes.
What are we projecting in the way of, did we project that that was going to be completely scaled up? And what's budget versus what's really going to happen? And maybe that's not even a fair question to ask you guys. Maybe that's to the superintendent, maybe it's to myself, I don't know.
So again, I think if those are some funds specifically that the board is interested in, which you should be, I'm interested in seeing, we can put that information together and bring it back to you at the next meeting. As far as the revenues created by that and that came to the district, I would say that it's fully scaled up. I mean, it was implemented and we got the taxes were collected and we got the amount that we were supposed to get as a district.
Well, you did, but the legislation passed and then we had COVID and revenue didn't meet full projections and now the economy is exceeding everywhere in the way of revenue versus what had been projected. So I was curious about that. And again, maybe I can come up with the resources to figure the answer to that one out myself.
So the corporate activity tax funded the student investment account. The first year that we had it, it funded for this district $2.3 million. That was budgeted and a plan had to be submitted and gone. They told us then the second year that we could count on that being about double. So originally, I think it was 6.8 million and it ended up 7 million and change. And that's the SIA, that's what we call it, the student investment account. Year 2, that has to be budgeted, planned for, and quarterly sent reports to ODE every quarter. And so, yes, it's $7 million this year. Yes, there's a plan for it. Yes, it will be spent and it has to be spent every year. So far for next year, they've told us we can anticipate about the same amount of funds.
I think it will be higher, but.
That would be amazing.
And so then the other concern I have, and again, maybe it's not fair to raise this during your presentation, but any potential budget cliffs in which we've used one-time funds to add staff, and when the one-time funds are gone, we'll have a problem, especially if we don't know it and don't plan for it.
Yes, I think probably the place for that specifically is in ESSER. And so we have used some one-time only funds for some staffing. The idea with ESSER was that it was resourced to deal with anything that came in our direction that would increase cost due to COVID. So I think like the classic example for me is we basically hired an extra custodian at every one of our schools, or that was the intent. So that because we had a lot of cleaning to do, anytime that, for example, in order to create space, we have multiple lunch periods. That way we can have students sit further apart and meet some of the distancing requirements. And anytime that those tables are used, they have to be disinfected, the entire cafeteria. And if you have 5 lunches, you spend a lot of time disinfecting tables. And so we use ESSER funds to hire up 21 custodians for this year. Those are temporary positions because there are temporary funds, and those positions go away at the end of this year. And so there are some places where it could look like there would be a cliff, if you want to call it that, but we've tried to be thoughtful about, who we hire and what the permanency is of that so that we don't get ourselves into that kind of a situation. Other uses for ESSER funds have been less about staffing and more about material, like, one-on-one devices for kids and training around that and some of the programming that was required in order to be able to deliver on that, purchases of masks and so forth. So there's a lot of different things there. Not a lot of FTE and ESSER, but some. And hopefully those are FTE that can go away.
Thank you.
Director Wilson.
So I'm looking at the report, and near the bottom, it talks about total period expenditures being about $6.3 million over. Does that mean that we spent $6.3 million more than we originally budgeted?
Hold on, sorry, I'm just looking at that. That's correct. That's correct. That is the total bottom line of what we expect, the revenue, yes.
It's a big
Sorry.
number. Do you have any idea what that is as a percentage of the budget?
That would be a little less than 6%, for this general fund.
And how are we going to make up, or how's that money made up? We just got lucky and had extra revenue we hadn't counted on?
Well, there was an expectation to use some of that ending fund balance from the prior year, so that was about $3 million. And then we've moved some, we have received some extra funding, and then we've got some funds that are moving across to other, grants, the SIA grant.
Okay.
No questions.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Monthly bond report. It looks like Mr. McKay, Skip is here tonight. Mr. Bowman. It's good to see you. Did you move to another country for a while? I kept hearing you're on vacation. And I'm like, and not that it's not well earned though.
No, I did. I took my 2-week disconnect from the world trip to beaches in the Dominican Republic and truly disconnected for 2 weeks. It was really wonderful.
Good, excellent for you,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, it's, yeah. I'll tell you more about it another time. But it's good to see you all, Chair Aganaga and members of the board. I do have Skip Hamilton here, and we're going to kind of share the report. The first thing I wanted to just structurally, one of the things that we've done is you'll notice that we are separating and we're starting to add other non-bond projects and giving you a report on it. You know, I don't think it's just important to report on the bond. I think we should be reporting on all the projects. I hope that you agree. If not, we won't do the report, but I think there's important information there that you need to be aware of. So what am I talking about? Transportation, as we have been, the North Albany Elementary School modular classrooms, the Waverly Elementary School modular classrooms, and the South Shore Elementary School classrooms. So we're going to add those as in the section that's non-bond. We want to make sure that the public recognizes that those are being funded somehow else, but it's part of an overall program that we continue to manage with you. So that is one change. So this month, we've added North Albany Elementary, Waverly, and South Shore to it. Budgets will be included next month, okay? I wished my general program update has been the same, unfortunately, for about a year. We continue to move forward incrementally at West Albany High School. We continue to make progress. We're not there yet. Currently, we're forecasting about the end of March for them to finally reach substantial completion. In the month of late January, February, and Skip will talk a little bit more about that, we found that there were some valves that were damaged when they flushed the systems with the prior mechanical contractor, and so those had to be replaced, about 30 of them. Again, all of this is part of that commissioning process that we do as our standard. And I think what you're seeing, you know, from the reports is the tremendous value that we go through this rigorous commissioning process to make sure that the system, when it's finally turned over to the district, when it finally becomes the district's responsibility, is functioning and performing the way it's supposed to. I don't know if I've said this to this group. I say it a lot to contractors. One of the things that I can say is on this bond, Oak Grove, Meadow Ridge, South Albany High School, because of that rigorous commissioning process, we had no mechanical warranty items in the one-year warranty period because the systems work. And typically, if you talk to neighboring school districts that have done bonds, one of the worst areas for their maintenance department is the mechanical system. So it is very painful for us, HMK, to manage, but the results for you is really huge because your maintenance department doesn't get strapped with lots of warranty type of issues or mechanical issues that they need to engage with. So we continue to work. The good news is that HMK, DLR, Northwest Engineers, and girding builders are fully engaged. I mean, sometimes you'll see contractors want to pull back from the table when it gets really tough. Girding builders continues to engage with us, continues to do the things that are needed to finish the project. I've talked about adding the other. And then one of the things I think many of you are aware of is when I think somebody does something good, I like to be able to point it out, whether it's a contractor, an architect, or a district employee. Emmer Construction, we had this excessively wet December and January. I mean, it was just horrible. And they're, in essence, building on a wetland. And if you.
Don't know that I would tell state government that, but go ahead.
Well, we did a mitigation. We had to do a wetland mitigation. So, I mean, we have all the permits, DEQ and EPA, Roger. But lots and lots of water. And they have just, they did an incredible job of managing that well. I think they only missed about 2 days when the footing trenches filled with water before they had the water out of there and the subcontractors working again to keep the project moving forward. So I think they've done a very good job of being very proactive. With that, I thought I'd let Skip talk about West and then where we are on North Albany and transportation, South Shore.
Chair Arguinaga and the board. Just a few updates on those projects. West Albany High, as David was mentioning, we did procure additional control valves that were found not performing. And so if we fast forward outside of the report, those valves did come in. They have finished installing them here in February, and additional testing will continue for the next week or so. And Girding is finishing up their punch list items as well. So that's what's happening at West. At Transportation, January with the wet weather, spent a lot of time getting footings poured, getting ready for the slabs to get poured in February, getting ready for the in-ground lifts for the buses to get installed in February, and also getting ready for the metal building to arrive in February. So there'll be a lot to report on the February report. As we've seen here in February, they've hit all their milestone dates. Great milestones.
And I think you're all aware that the original pre-engineered metal building subcontractor defaulted. And so we had to bring a new pre-engineered metal building contractor in. And we've been really tracking this February 22nd date for steel to arrive, which helps get us back on towards a schedule to being complete, and it did arrive on February 22nd, which was great news.
Yep. And then, the outcome of that is that this week, with the metal building components that arrived last week, we will start seeing steel being erected on the slab. So we'll be coming up out of the ground, so to speak, from a construction perspective for the first time on this project. So a huge milestone this coming week. South Shore, we are in design, and then also we have started the conditional use permit process with the City of Albany. And we are going through the process of selecting our general contractor for that project that will also be the same general contractor used for Nays and Waverly. And then for Nays, Waverly, North Albany Elementary School, and Waverly Elementary School, we are finalizing design for bidding and the modular production so they can get installed this summer. So those are kind of updates on those projects.
Do you have a estimated completion date on the bus barn?
Yes, we're looking at November of 2022. We had to assess the schedule impact from the metal building change that David was talking about, and so we're going through that process before we publish that date formally, but that's what it looks like right now.
Perfect. And thank you, Dave, for checking on those valves. Because we had this conversation 6 months ago about these valves, and you said it's going to be a problem we're keeping an eye on, and they failed. So great job keeping an eye on that contractor with that. And kudos to you, because your sites are always clean. They're presentable. They're not your typical construction site. So I appreciate that as well. Gentlemen, do you have any other questions?
I have a couple. So the previous metal building contractor, the default, tell me about, how's that work? How do you assign a contractor and then just default on it?
That's a great question. Director Nyquist. What happened was, so they're a subcontractor at Emmerich Construction. And they came to the district to Emmerich in April, and they said that they needed an additional $250,000 because of inflation, even though they had committed to a contract value for the work. Emmerich, in essence, said to them, no, you're in breach, in essence.
Right.
And then Emmerich moved in breach proceedings with them and then went out to award to another contractor. And then Emmerich is pursuing that through the legal channels with that subcontractor for damages.
So we don't get stuck with the additional 250,000. That's the general contractor's issue, not ours.
That's correct.
Perfect response. So pouring concrete in this weather and slabs and all of that, is this, doing this time of year, was that the plan and the design, or are we just stuck with that because of other unknowns? Wouldn't it be more efficient and easier to do when it wasn't raining buckets out?
Yes, is the very simple question.
But wait, I asked three. The first one is, was this by design?
No.
To do it now?
No,
Okay.
because of, because that delay is about 118 days to the overall schedule for that default to that contract, that subcontractor. And so what that's done is it's pushed everything later.
Okay. Thank you. The other question, I'm not even sure it's for you guys, but the status of the current bus barn, have we sold that? What are we doing there?
It's in use.
It is, but it won't be soon, we hope, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
To evaluate the property and make a decision at that time.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to our next agenda item, interdistrict transfers.
So Chair Aganaga, members of the board, we have a policy by March 1st that the board establishes a number of students to be given admission for the following year. This is from district to district. The request that you see is the same request that went before the board previously as well. It allows 8 students from outside of the district to enter in each grades K through 5, 50 for total middle school, 50 total high school. That's not including AOS. Similar to what the districts around us do, there isn't a district around us who doesn't allow inter-district transfers at all.
When you say not including AOS, is that due to we don't take people to AOS?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I understand it. So this is between schools, or is this outside the district coming in?
Outside of the district coming in.
So because we get paid, we get reimbursed on a per student basis, why would we want to cap it at 8?
So the inter-district transfers go both ways, right? So you couldn't say as a district, we're going to allow, I'm going to make this up, 100 students to come in, but we're only going to allow 5 to leave, right? What it requires is that you say, what's the number that you will allow to leave and to come? So you can't set the number so that it's simply only advantageous for you and disadvantageous for others. So it goes both ways. So you would cap it, and of course, it's always based on space. So it's certainly possible that somebody would request to come into a school in the district that didn't have space at a specific grade level. This is also just a starting point. So if at any point in the year we wanted that number to be more or less, we could come before the board and ask for an amendment. The only rule is that there can't be a pending request when you make the amendment.
So just in my very simplistic terms or thoughts here, I want to have the greatest school district within 50 miles, and I want everybody to be able to want to come here. And I want to take as many of them as I can that we can fit that will continue and carry on that momentum. And it would seem to me that I can't get there from here with this number that we're, I mean, is it Superintendent Saxon, that's just how it is, and accept it and vote yes and move on?
In short, I would probably just say that, yes.
Okay.
There's an incredible amount of, history to, how this all happens and why, and it has to do with, all kinds of transfer recruiting and that kind of thing that went on, 10, 15 years ago from district to district, and then the creation of open enrollment, and then doing away with open enrollment. This is just statewide. And so there's a lot of water under this bridge. And this is where districts generally have gotten with these decisions. They create some balance and reduce the thought that folks are going to try to raid your kids or you're going to do the same to them.
I'll let you know, Director Nyquist, that we've never reached this number that we've set since I've been here. So we've never reached the number of kind of either way for inter-district. So that is, and generally speaking in this area, when we look at the data from the last 4 years, there's kind of a westward migration. So generally speaking, Sweet Home loses students to Lebanon, Lebanon loses students to Albany, Albany loses students to Corvallis. It generally happens in that trend in this area.
But there was a mass exodus during COVID of children that wanted to go to charter schools.
I wouldn't say that at all.
Or denied. Well, I mean, I can say like 10, 15 people came up to me and said, hey, I want to leave and go to a charter school, but I'm not allowed to leave.
So I would say, so that's different. What you're talking about is the 3% charter school cap. And I certainly wouldn't say that 10 is a mass exodus, but we have the numbers who are approved and denied. That's separate from this. This is inter-district transfers, from Lebanon to Albany, from Albany to Corvallis.
What do you think, gentlemen?
Rob, is this typical, these numbers?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Just to, if we were to keep our district the best and recruit to implement that, I would not want to be in the position of telling someone who lives within our district, for whatever reason, if they truly, really want to go to another district, I wouldn't want to say, no, we're keeping everybody and we're trying to add to that. I want to be able to say, if you really truly want to leave, I'm not going to stop you.
Do we need a motion on this?
Yes.
You did it tonight?
The board policy is by March 1st.
Move to waive board policy and the timeline on this? I don't even know if I can do that, but
I guess, what's the concern?
I'll withdraw my motion. Well, the concern is that it puts constraints on unforeseen circumstances and unforeseen opportunities. The other side of that is we all collectively have our hands full with a whole bunch of other things, and I'm not sure that this is a battle for me at least to fight or pick tonight as much as I would like to. So.
I move to approve the interdistrict transfer information as presented.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Don't see anything else on the agenda, so I move to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Chris. 9:07.